Right, look, let's talk about the EU and this summit. I mean, it's been called a surrender summit even before we knew what was coming in. We've had details coming in from about 7:30 this morning about what is likely in the deal. We've seen it published. We're about to sign it. We're now pretty clear what's going to happen. I've gone through some of the details. Is it a surrender summit? Is it a surrender deal?
Well, I think it's the beginning of a real sellout of the referendum result. Of course, he's going to make it very clear that we're not going back in because he'd have to have another referendum for that.
But he keeps saying that.
Reality is we are moving very quickly towards a situation where we're becoming a rule taker again. And it's even worse now because we don't have any say at all, because we don't have any members or any involvement. But we're going to be told what to do. Yeah. And for what? I mean, you put it brilliantly there. You can really find very, very little. They will try to present all the positive aspects. The defence thing is not positive. I think it's actually a very serious concern, because we are really beginning to move away almost from NATO and go back at seeing some kind of European issue. And I think the other problem is with this trying to align completely with EU rules on food and agriculture is what is America going to say about that? What's going to happen to our other trade deals, which were actually
and the deal with the US is not, it's not signed and sealed at all. There's still ongoing talks. But if we're going to align ourselves not just with EU agricultural, farming rules today, but again, this key phrase, and everyone said, look at this key phrase, dynamic alignment. And you've had to deal with this in Northern Ireland. We're basically still having to go along with these rules. So if the EU changes the rules, we have to go along them. Well, you can't do a deal with the US or anyone else on any of these, on trade on these goods, if your rules might change and you have no say over them.
Yeah, and I think Trump will see through this, and who knows what the repercussions are. And I have to say that long term, whoever the president of America is, I would prefer to be really close and involved with the United States than the kind of alignment that we're looking at.
And this is the key thing. And again, I know one of the arguments that was made, the key arguments from the Remainer side back in 2016 was that, these were, of course, the biggest single, bloc that we do of trade with is the EU, although actually we do more trade as an individual country with the US. But, the EU was closer, of course, when it comes to animal products, agricultural products and lots of other sales of actual goods rather than services. It was more, of course, we're going to do more sales closer to home, and that would make sense. But the reality is, as Brexiteers pointed out, the EU is not a growing bloc. We can have more and more members, but it is not thriving economically. Indeed, it is really in the economic doldrums, in some places rather more than we are. And there are always growing economies across the Atlantic, on the other side of the world in Asia, which we should be trying to be doing deals with, say, like India, all these countries that are massively expanding. There are huge markets. This is going to make that harder, if not impossible.
Yes, and the reality is we could have got this, we should have been able to negotiate this kind of cooperation on the agricultural side without having to sign up. I don't know who's been doing, well, I do know who's been doing our negotiating, and it's the same people who did it last time, only for a different government. And I mean, the Conservatives shouldn't get off the hook on this because, of course, they allowed a lot of these things to happen. The fishing thing originally was shocking. And I mean, I just feel so sorry and angry at now what is happening to the fishing industry, just like they're trying to destroy the future for young farmers in the future because of the inheritance tax. Yep. This is now going to really destroy the future of many of the young fishermen who were hoping that at some stage they would get back control of our own waters.
I mean, that was one of the key things. I mean, we know it was a real sticking point, the French and the Spanish, but particularly the French. This has been a massive sticking point.
We've just given in.
But they had Keir Starmer over a barrel. He arranges a summit. There's going to be this announcement. We're negotiating the deal. And they're like, well, we want 12 years. But what's he going to do? Otherwise, he's going to turn up to a summit and he's not got a deal. They had him over a barrel. The man couldn't negotiate his way out of a shoebox.
I know, but you see, he loves being on the stage, doesn't he? He loved that kissing, what's her name? I always can hardly pronounce it, but the European Commissioner when she arrived today, he loves all that. He spent an awful lot of time since he became Prime Minister of travelling around the world. That's what he needs to really wake up and realise that, first of all, those Labour MPs in the red wall seats are doomed. They're finished. One or two of them might be independent enough to stand up and speak out. I doubt it. We've only got Graham Stringer practically in the Commons now, who is a Brexiteer. And I think we are going to see Reform membership hugely rise in the next few days. And I think this is well, it's not quite the final nail in the coffin of a Labour government. And sadly, because they've got such a big majority, we're going to have to wait quite a while.
Well, and he's got the mandate for this. He says, so his view is going to be, as long as we're not formally in the EU, as long as we're not got one of those stars on the flag, as far as he's concerned, he has a mandate to do anything.
But the other thing, Julia, and I would just want to say on this idea of youth mobility and all of that kind of thing, it's ridiculous because we're one country and then we're expecting 27 other countries to have that freedom of movement.
Lots of which have 50% youth unemployment, by the way.
Yeah, and they're going to love it to come from Bulgaria, Romania, places like that. There will be, and this is the sort of thing that just makes Keir Starmer look silly, because last week he said he was caring about bringing migration down, and then today this is likely to be announced, or we won't get the detail. I don't think we'll get the detail of an awful lot of this, and it really is up to good journalists from all newspapers and media to analyse it.
But you know as well as I do how many of journalists, particularly in broadcast media, actually, I just think this is a great thing. They're all in favour of this. Now, they're all very excited about, e-gates, passport e-gates. And it is a pain in the backside. And it is very frustrating. You arrive somewhere in Europe on a holiday, where most people go on a holiday from here, and you arrive, and then you watch the 5 people who've come off your plane who are EU nationals, and they've got 5 different customs officers, and they go through, no queue whatsoever, and you're standing in a queue with 200 Brits. Now, the thing is, the reality of that is that's not a requirement of Brexit. Individually, you countries have made their own decision. Individual airports often. It's just a question of reassigning. I don't even mind the EU people getting priority. I've got no problem with that. Those countries are allowed to do entirely what they want. I believe in national sovereignty. But the point is, even if they do make this change, it will still be up to EU countries. Some of them want to punish us. Some of them want to make us welcome, like Portugal. I carry my passport. I don't care. But also, here's the thing. I've all these Remainers I keep meeting who say, oh, coping with the queues now. Apparently, none of them ever queued before 2020. Ever once. Not once.
I think you sometimes wonder, did none of them ever travel before we left the European Union? But also, we allow all EU citizens to come in to the same areas
because we're not punishing them.
So why did our government not stand up and say, well, okay, if we want some changes, proper changes on all sorts of other things? We just gave away. I'll
tell you what it was. There was a view, and I agreed with this view from Boris Johnson, which was actually, look, now then the bitterness is all gone. We've done the deal, and the deal wasn't perfect, but it was basically all he could scupper together quickly after the horrendous hatchet job that Theresa May had done after promising to stand by the Brexit deal, which of course she'd campaigned, didn't really turn up, but had voted against. But the view was, let all the animosity die down and then we'll just get back to being sensible and practical for everyone's benefit. But no, Brussels, and particularly the French president, wanted to punish us. No one could be seen to leave the EU and get away with it and do well. We had to be punished. And the point is, again, if EU is such a great club, you wouldn't have to punish anyone for leaving, would you? And the thing is, they are still punishing us. Mention the fisheries. Now, look, most people in this country, most people watching a listings of show, they don't work in the fisheries, they don't know anyone in the fisheries. But the reality is, it's the same as farmers. People can feel, they can see that job, they understand the importance of that job, and they'll also understand the importance not just of those working in the fishing industry, but the coastal towns that rely on that and which were booming, thriving towns for centuries. But once we gave away our waters, basically have seen economic collapse. And we've got the similar thing with farming as well, that we are undermining our governments day by day, some really crucial industries on which communities rely.
Well, Julia, I saw Keir Starmer working when he was Shadow Europe Minister, and I didn't trust him then. And when he called for a second referendum, and let's not forget that half the cabinet called for a second referendum. They're all Remainers, and half of them called for a second referendum. I didn't trust him then. I don't trust him now. Thank goodness the country's looking like it's not trusting him now. And all I can say today that, I'm very glad I'm no longer in the Labour Party, and I just wish that some of those Labour Party members would actually think back to what their party stood for and realise that they never stood for giving away control of our laws and our border and all of those things.
They were elected. One of the promises, no matter whether they would uphold Brexit, this is just sneaky, going back in by the back door, paying for the privilege of giving away more and more of our rights and our national sovereignty. The thing is, you know what? They will pay for it because the British people won't put up with it. I know so many people who voted Remain, thought that Brexit was the wrong decision, but voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 because he said he would get Brexit done. And they'd never voted Tory before in their lives. Their view was it was so wrong that people had tried to stop the enactment of that vote. My thing is, it's really, really simple. You're either a Democrat or you aren't.
Absolutely.
And we know who isn't right now.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's certainly not Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister. And sometimes you genuinely feel, and I have to say this carefully, but I genuinely feel sometimes he's more interested in the European Union interests than he is in the British interests.
I don't think that sometimes. I think that all the time. It's our only area of difference there. Baroness Kate Hoey, you've been a fantastic Brexiteer. Always appreciate you coming on the show. Always speaks it like it is.